So this week we've looked at walls, and once again this is going to be a shortish summary of the things that we covered. It's not going to be as extensive as the 2-hour session, but I will go over the basic features of the things that we did cover. This is a wall, albeit made of glass and solid panels. This is a curtain wall system. This is a brick wall, so it's a standard type of wall. And we've got this thing here, which is a concrete retaining wall, which is again a fairly standard wall system. Now walls behave in pretty much a similar way to the columns, in so much as they go from one point to another, or they are not constrained. So if I select this wall, if I can get that and look at the properties of it, then we can see that it's got a base constraint at the ground floor level, and its top constraint is up to level 2. Okay, there's no offsets on these constraints, so it's not projecting below ground floor or sitting slightly above ground floor. It's right on that ground floor line, and similarly with the top level. Similar to the floors that we've looked at, this is made up of a series of layers. So again, under the properties, we can click on edit type. And the structure for this one, this is a system family, so the system family's basic wall, and the type of wall is a cavity with 102.5 outer skin. It's got a 50 air gap, it's got 45 insulation, and it's got a 100 mil of dense concrete block on the inside. So under the structure option, we will look at this, and this is the outside, so this is the exterior side, this is the interior side, so it's going from the finished brick common. Notice it's just a finish, it's not anything structural. And then we've got thermal air with a number 3 next to it, and thermal air with another number 3 next to it. Then you've got the core boundary. This is the important part of the wall. This is what connects to other core objects. So this has got a value of 1. This is the most important value. 1 will smash through 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so and similarly 5. So 1 is the important one. That will drive through any other level. You can't have a 1 and then a 2 and then a 1 back here somewhere. It has to fall out from this core boundary. It has to be 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 3, 4. As long as the value is getting higher as it moves out from the core, then that's fine. We'll look at the preview as well, because there are lots of different things that I would have covered in the session that you just might have not quite picked up. We can edit certain aspects of this. Now, when walls join, they join in a sort of a weird and wonderful way. They tend to join so that these things butt up or you mitre the corner. And we'll see a little example later on how it's often perceived by people who use Revit that it doesn't matter if they drive through columns, even though that's not how they would be built. You would deal with that at a detail level. At 1 to 50 or 1 to 100 scale, it's more indicative of the positioning of these things and the relationship between sort of a wall and a column, for example. But I've spoken to lots of people who don't like the fact that it doesn't behave the way you want it to. And so there are some ways that you could deal with these things. Sadly, most of them are in section mode, because what you'd really want to do sometimes is take this skin and drag it back so that when the column will sit in here, for example, and then this won't just pass straight through it. But it doesn't do that. Ways around it are building walls individually, but then you lose the thermal integrity, so they don't behave as one thing, because we've got a total thickness here of 310, and the R value and thermal mass is as specified. But if I took these down to their individual layers, then I wouldn't get this total value and this total behavior for the wall. So dragging this back would be a nice option, but you can't do it in plan mode. Don't quite know why, but you can do it in section mode, but you can't do it in plan mode. Maybe it's something to do with the way the software functions. So if I show you section mode, so we're looking at this edit and on section modify type attributes, and if I just zoom in to this bottom bit, now I can't select any of these lines yet, but if I click modify vertical structure, then I can now select these bits, so they all become highlighted. I'll zoom right in so you can see. Okay, it's not panning properly. So if I click back on modify, then I can click on this line and unlock it. So I could potentially then slide that up or slide that down if there was a floor coming in. And I can do the same with this. I can unlock that. I don't think many people are aware of this function, but now you are. And with all these layers, I can do exactly the same thing. But I can't do it in plan mode. There's no modify option for this in plan mode. So you have to sort of work around these sorts of things, and I will show you how to do that in this little video. But really this is just to explain that the wall is very similar to a floor in so much it's made up of layers, and when you insert the wall into the project, then there's lots of different ways in which you can position it. You can either position it from the outside face or the inside face, or the absolute center of the wall, or the center of the core, or the outside edge of the core, or the inside edge of the core. So lots of different ways to position that wall. So I'll cancel that and cancel out of this. If we look at the curtain wall, for example, again, if I click on edit type, it says system family, it's a curtain wall. Now effectively this curtain wall, if you notice here, the vertical and horizontal mullions doesn't have any. This curtain wall is just another one of those frameworks that hold things together. Okay, it's the system family is the curtain wall, and it's told to behave as an exterior wall. The curtain panel is none, it's not, nothing's defined, so you can add all this definition yourself. The horizontal grid, there isn't one. The vertical grid, there isn't one. So when you create these things, now I've got horizontal and vertical grids in, I had to put them in myself. That's not to say that you couldn't create a curtain wall system with predefined grid patterns. For example, if we look at some other system families, so the exterior glazing, it's still part of the curtain wall family, but this is a type called exterior glazing, and this has some extra bits and pieces. It has a layout is fixed distance, and the spacing is 1830. And again, the layout can be fixed distance, or it can be fixed number, or maximum spacing, minimum spacing. So again, lots of flexibility within that. And the horizontal grid is a 4 meter fixed distance. Okay, but still none of the mullions. And even though these things going across, we refer to them in the UK as transoms, they're all referred to as mullions in this software. So don't go looking for transoms anywhere. It's horizontal and vertical mullions. Similarly, a storefront has, again, slightly different parameters, but they're all part of the same system family, which is a curtain wall. And again, that goes from one level to the other. So again, in this type properties, so the curtain wall thing there, it goes from level ground up to level 3. And this grayed out area, unconnected height, that's all we get really with this. You can have angles and justification and other things that you could look at your leisure. But if I zoom in on this, so instead of selecting the curtain wall, I'm going to tab in to some of these elements. So I'm just hovering over this curtain wall for a second, and with the tab key, just tap it, and you'll start scrolling through some selection options. So I've got the curtain wall mullion. In this case, it's rectangular 50 by 150. If I tap again, it drives me down to the grid line, and then the panel next to it. So I've got lots of different options. So the curtain wall I can select, the mullion I can select, the grid line I can select, and the glass I can select. Now if I selected the grid line just by tapping on that, I get some spacings for this. If I decided to change that, because these are equi-spaced, if I decided to change this to 3 meters, for example, and hit enter, then it just adjusts. But the beauty of it is that that moves, but this glass gets smaller, and everything associated to it just adjusts automatically. This one gets bigger because the family, this curtain wall system family, is designed to work exactly like that. These panels, if I just tap in to select the panel, if I can, sometimes, there you go. This is a system panel glazed, and edit type, and all I get is a slight offset distance. That's the forward and back offset distance. The material, which is glass, and the thickness of the glass is 25 mil. The analytical construction is Pilkington glazing. That's what the glass is doing. But if you wanted to edit the family, you would know that this piece of glass is told to move with those curtain grids. Okay, so if the curtain grid moves, you move, and that's vertically and horizontally. Okay, so again, you've got to dig down and boil down these things in Revit. It's not just something that you can throw in and hope for the best. You really do have to be aware of all of the levels at which you have to sort of get down to get to the basic part of this software. But hopefully by now you're starting to appreciate that these things all behave in a very, very similar way. Okay, so that's kind of just an overview of the walls. This thing here, which is a basic 300 concrete retaining wall, there's nothing to that. I'm just clicking on the structure. It's just one thing. It's inside the core, and it's 300 mil thick, and it has a material which is concrete and cast in situ, and that concrete has thermal mass and resistance. And if I went into the material by clicking on this bit and then clicking on that ellipsis thing, it takes me to the materials and the physical, so thermal expansion, mechanical, so it's got that modulus and the Poisson's ratio and the shear modulus, and all of that information is built into that lump of wall. So I'll just close that down and this down. So what we're going to do is I'll start off with my frame, and we'll just run through a couple of examples of putting some curtain walls in on this type of exterior wall. The windows and doors, I mean, really they are so easy to put in. We'll just cover that in class. So I'm just going to flip back over to the earlier version of this drawing, and we'll just add some walls and curtain panels.